Let's start recording it now. Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But so one of the reasons I wanted to catch up, just so you know, if you're new on this recording, Ashton and I, we go way back. Tell us how we met, Ashton.
Yeah. So I met Stu while going through college at Auburn. I guess I was a freshman when I met Stu through
Okay.
on-campus ministry through Dive. And so just kind of started going on Thursday night services and struck up a relationship where we started meeting throughout the week. And, long story short, developed just an amazing bond. And, this man introduced me to my wife and married us, and just been a
Yeah.
great leader.
Well, and Ashton, just my perspective on Ashton, he's one of the, I don't know, hardest working, drive, gifted, loving servant, work ethic, everything. He loves the Lord with all his heart. Hardest worker I know. I remember a story I'm going to share on you, Ashton. Middle of football season, or no, it might have been right off season, but you're in the middle of football practices at Auburn, and you had a day where they had a day off of practices, and you called me. You might not even remember this, but you called me and were like, "Hey, I got a day off of practice, and who needs service right now? Is there a place I can serve today?" And I was like, "You can actually enjoy taking a break?" And you're like, "No, I want to serve. Where can I serve? Who can I serve?" And he would work with some more inner city. Well, they weren't more inner city kids, more Latino kids, weren't they? Out in the projects that you would work with every once in a while. It was.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, and I definitely credit Dive to a lot of that. Just having opportunities to go and do tutoring with kids out in La Chapoca at elementary schools, and also working at youth prisons and all of that. Yeah, man, I definitely remember. Also, yeah, just all of the opportunities to serve, to raise money to go to Haiti and Jacksonville. So
we went to Haiti together. We went to inner city Jacksonville together. That was an interesting trip. We could tell some stories on that. We'll pass on that for now. Absolutely. But and Ashton's he's a great guy. We stay in touch. We talk every few months just to catch up on life and family. It's great. Did get to the privilege of marrying you in life. But I wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of, I'm recording this to share with some other people because there's so much racial tension in our country right now. And a lot of people are struggling with how to do it. And I know a lot of blacks don't feel heard. A lot of whites feel like confused. Some of them get it and have seen it up close. Others might be naive maybe to, I don't even understand. And so what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to just listen and learn from you. I've met with a few other people as well. Met with 3 pastors the other day. Met with another former student of mine that I have been talking with, and I'm meeting with a few others as well. But I'm just curious what your take is. What were your experiences with racism and growing up in the South and all that?
Yeah, man. So I would say growing up in Louisiana, there were definitely instances kind of scattered throughout my childhood where, I experienced racism. Even as a kid, man, I can remember all the way back to, being 6 or 7, and, having people of other races kind of making me feel like I shouldn't be around their kids, or making me feel unwanted and things of that nature. And interestingly enough, yes, that came from experiences dealing with other races, but I even experienced racial bias from people within my own community at times. I can remember being a freshman in high school, and me and a buddy of mine were at a sporting event with my dad, and my dad asked us to go to his truck, which was out in the parking lot, and get something for him. And so we go out to the truck, and I'm leaned over inside of the truck, half of my body's in, half of my body's out, and get whatever he wanted, close the door, and I'm running back into the stadium, and this police car just comes like chasing us down. And we were probably 13 or 14 at the time. And a black police officer kind of jumps out, and I have the keys to the truck in my hand, but he immediately makes me and my friend spread eagle and puts us on the hood of the car and everything like that. And so, that's one instance within my own community. I can remember, doing service work at a nursing home, dealing with, elderly folks, some who were experiencing Alzheimer's, and basically being called racial slurs, not just from people who weren't all the way there cognitively, but who had grown up in an era where those type of things were commonplace, and I guess somewhat reverting back to that. And the reason why I kind of mentioned the experiences with racism from both sides is that I think my experiences have taught me that we all kind of carry this underlying bias, whether we want to admit it or not. And I think it comes partly from stereotypes, and stereotypes are there for a reason, obviously. So there's some underlying truth to it all, but I think that it kind of translates into bias when we allow that to be a shortcut in our thinking process, and we just kind of use it to make a snap judgment or a snap assessment about something, as opposed to taking the time to slow down and really try to think through things thoroughly. And so, my experience with racial bias and racism and things of that nature, I think part of it is, the way people were brought up, and in society, we kind of use these basically thoughts and stereotypes to kind of shortcut the process of getting to know a person. We kind of go off of, what we think they like, and make snap judgments there. So that's the type of things so that's kind of what I experienced growing up.
So tell me, Ashton, you grew up in Louisiana. You played football in college in Alabama.
Right.
But then you also studied in England and some things like that. Did you see, what were the differences in how you were treated? Is it a universal? There's racism. Is it different cultures treat you differently in different places? I'm just curious. And you were in Texas A&M as well.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we've had the great fortune of living in different parts of the world and being in a bunch of different communities. I would say, believe it or not, my time in England was, I didn't really experience any kind of racism there, believe it or not. I mean, I know it is there, but I can remember getting off of the train, in Sheffield when we first landed there, and immediately having people to kind of help me figure out where to go and be very welcoming. And I think a large part of that obviously is that it was a university town, and so they're kind of used to having a multicultural town and kids coming in to go to school. And so just being honest, my time in England, I didn't really experience.
You didn't see it.
Yeah, but what's interesting is I also spent time in Africa, and again, I kind of experienced a little bit of kind of like stereotyping in Africa from
because you're American.
Because I'm American, and because I'm a Black American.
Yep.
And so I think in this day and age, social media and the internet has made the world a lot smaller, and people are allowed to see different aspects of society in different parts of the world. And again, they use that to basically form certain judgments in their mind that gives them cognitive shortcuts to assess a person. And I definitely experienced that, like I said, from people in Africa as well. So it's kind of interesting. I know racism is all over the place. You can just look at the migration crises all throughout Europe during that time, which was 2015 to 2017. But my personal experience was pretty bland there, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I had some comments actually I have a friend that is from Nigeria, and he's here in America, and he says the way I get treated is different than my African American friends because I have an accent. It's like I get treated better than I think my African American friends do. I thought that was an interesting statement. And I don't know. I haven't processed it all yet. I don't have conclusions. I'm just trying to learn.
Yeah, I mean,
it's interesting that you said in Africa it's different.
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of what that kind of highlights in my mind is that, you know, identification is not just necessarily based upon physical appearance. You know, I could be the same complexion as a person from, you know, Nairobi, but culturally, you know, we're different in so many ways. And I think that is, you know, also important to kind of keep in mind.
So you think cultural values really are a big contributor?
Cultural values.
So I was talking with a couple of pastors the other day, and we were both like, you know, some people will say, you know, you need churches 50-50, half black, half white. And we're just like, no, there's certain things that I teach a different way than a typical one of your churches would teach, and our worship's a little different, and some people like ours better, some like yours better. I think it's good that we have the different cultural things that we value, you know, in the church setting in America. And we all universally agreed on that. But he's like, yeah, but sometimes our cultures, we get misunderstood. I don't know if that's part of the, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my personal take on it is that, you know, cultural differences are actually a good thing. I mean, I know,
I agree.
You know, I think that, you know, it definitely is the spice of life. You know, variety is the spice of life.
Yes.
And, you know, I think that there are some very unique and important things that get handed down from generation to generation that are just culturally based. Now, some of those things obviously have baggage that isn't good. But, you know, I don't necessarily, I think that, you know, what it is, again, is that, you know, people can take those cultural differences and use that as, again, you know, a signpost to try to make a snap judgment on someone. Like, so for instance, you know, an example that I would say is like, you know, different political parties. If somebody tells me they're a Republican, I automatically have 10 different facts in my mind that I'm assuming to be true about them.
Right.
You know, whereas if I say, you know, I'm a Democrat, or, you know, that person tells me they're a Democrat, the same thing goes for that. So I think that is just kind of like, you know, culturally, we have these signposts that set up in our mind that kind of prohibits, you know, getting to know a person in full.
Okay. So I want to, do you think racism has gotten better or worse within your lifetime? Have we gotten better as a culture or worse?
Well, so, you know, I would say if you kind of look at, and it depends on how you want to assess it. I mean, there's an experiential way to assess that, like, oh, am I experiencing racism, you know, more frequently, less frequently? Or you can look at the distribution of resources or quality of life standards. And I think if you use kind of those latitude parameters, all of the research and data says just kind of generally things have gotten better throughout the world. But what I do think is that, you know, we do have racism, and I think that is something that's just never gonna go away, unfortunately.
Okay.
And I think it kind of molds and shapes forms, and it kind of crops its head up at different times, kind of like right now. But, you know, you know, maybe I'm kind of biased just based on my educational background, but I personally think that, you know, just like how the Bible says, you'll always have the poor. You know, I think you'll always have inequality. I think you'll always have competition for a limited amount of resources. And I think that whenever you have a limited amount of resources, just generally, you know, that's going to create, you know, obviously competition. And I think competition kind of leads to, you know, tribalism, essentially. You know, I identify with this group of people, and so I want to get resources for this group. And then that in turn makes me look at other groups in a negative light.
All right. No, that's helpful. How about media and social media? How have they helped or hurt? Like, I'm just saying, how have they helped or hurt unity? Let's just throw that out there.
Yeah. So, you know, so for the social media side of things, I don't participate in social media. So I can't really speak for it other than from what I hear secondhand, which is, you know, usually not good things. I think, yeah, you're right. I think, you know, with media, I think that it has a good side and a bad side. You know, from the bad side, I think that obviously it does promote these stereotypes that lead to people making negative judgments about one another. You know, you see, you see the depictions of people in pop culture and movies and all types of media, and we kind of rely on that again to kind of basically help us judge people. I think, you know,
we do the same with politics with media.
Right. Yeah. And I think the positive side of it is that, you know, now, and this could tie into social media, everybody's a journalist now, and while you have the negative side of that, I think that there's much more light shed on, racism and, acts like what happened, here with George Floyd. And so I think that it's important, media is important in terms of creating public outcry and getting, public officials basically to take notice and want to act on some of these things. So it's I think, it's positive from that aspect of it, because right now you need the media attention to make this a serious issue, to move it up on the agenda. But again, I think that the negative side is that, it can also perpetuate stereotypes.
Okay, so you're a guy that very well trained policy and making things happen way up high. What changes need to be made within our country from that level? Because I look and I say, well, it's a heart issue. But then I go, wait, but my job is hearts, right? I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be. I want to teach the word of God. I want people. So maybe that's just my bias because of what I'm gifted at, but you're gifted at the higher level. So what can be done at that level?
Man, I actually view it the complete opposite. I don't think it starts at the higher level. I mean, you do have, and the reason I say that and I can go on and on about this particular question, but, I do think that from what you're saying in terms of what I do agree with in terms of the top down, you do have instances throughout history to where, these huge monumental changes in civil rights and things of that nature did not actually happen until the government got involved and helped push some of that stuff forward, with integration and civil rights and things of that nature. However, I kind of look at it from, a political philosophy perspective of, as far as the way our society is supposed to function, it's supposed to be, we have a representative democracy. And so from that standpoint, whenever you have, the people who are being represented within that system overwhelmingly holding one view or being of one particular demographic, I think that, there's always going to be this imbalance of power. And so I think that, you really kind of have to start from the grassroots in terms of basically having folks who are underrepresented in politics, basically have an understanding of how to organize, getting politically activated, and putting the people in place in higher places that will actually care about the issues that you care about, because that's where you're going to have change. And then also just kind of tying that into, even with the particular issue of, we kind of every year we have this cropping up of issues with police, and people always asking, like, when do we hold the police accountable? Well, in my opinion, yeah, you can hold police accountable, and that is effective, but I think you also need to hold the people above them accountable. And the way you do that is through, your vote, and through basically selecting who you put in office over them. Because I think that that's kind of the only way that these type of things remain high up on the public policy agenda personally. So.
No, see, that's great. You talk about on the grassroots level. So what is it that people like me or people that are in my church, what are some practical things that we can do to better promote unity?
Yeah. Yeah. So the thought that I had that came to mind is, it's probably, I would say, in terms of unity, it's a little bit dicey, because you want to be a church for all people, for all communities. And, I think that is very much so important. What I think, just kind of, and I'll kind of build into my actual answer, but the first thing is that I think it's important to have people understand that you are for all people every day of the year. Like, I don't think that it should take, an outrageous event like this to basically have, a bunch of people kind of saying, all right, we recognize that this is an issue. Yeah. I think that it's important to kind of make that a message and commit to it, every day of the year. And the way you go about doing that, that looks different for every church. Like, I know some churches, they have a really strong commitment to social justice in terms of, basically helping folks in the church, get housing or help with substance abuse or things of that nature. And so basically kind of every day walking it out to show where, we're not just here for one group of people, we're here for all people.
Right.
I would say, kind of tying into this whole grassroots movement, I think that there's kind of like two aspects of it. And one of them I kind of already touched on. One is that, you know, communities and people and families need to be made whole. And so I think that, you know, taking active steps to basically help the home function better, you know, in terms of, again,
Yes.
poverty, substance abuse, poor education systems, all of those things that kind of basically degrade the home, I think are all good touch points to try to intervene. The other thing is that don't assume that, you know, you already have the answer and that you're coming to these people and saying, look, this is what I want to do for you. I think that it's important to create a space where you can talk with folks and basically see, you know, how can I help in what you're trying to accomplish? And so that may be something as simple as, you know, having a modified town hall meeting where folks kind of come together and create a list of important items that they want to be addressed in their community, and basically helping them create some talking points, and maybe, you know, maybe creating a avenue for them to participate in local government meetings and express those views, you know what I mean, or helping people get registered to vote, you know, things like that. Empowerment, essentially, as opposed to fixing it for, you know, a group of people.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. You know, it's funny, I typically make the statement very often, like, instead of us telling God what we're going to do for him, we need to pray God will show us where he's moving, we can join him. And you said something very similar, listen to what they need and join them. I think that's very helpful. So, yeah, good. Well, I mean, and, you know, I'm trying to encourage more conversations between individuals. You know, I think the better the relationship, the less we judge, and the less, you know, like, we can get through all the stereotypes. We can get through all that when I actually get to know you. And I think sometimes we're intimidated by each other. You know, they're just a little different, or they're too cool, or maybe they're too, and both sides are insecure sometimes, and that gets in the way. I know I've loved our relationship, just getting to know your background and getting to know you, and hopefully I've helped you some, but I know you've helped me a lot, and I've loved that. And I think the more that we can do that, I'm encouraging people to do, but it can be hard because it takes effort.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway. All right. Well, cool. Do you have anything else you wanted to add before we head out of here?
Man, you know, the biggest thing I would say, you know, is that, you know, I think you kind of touched on it. The thing that I think, you know, makes you and I click, you know, despite all of our differences, you know, me being a Black guy from Louisiana, you being a white guy from Texas, all of those different things, is essentially, you know, we got to know each other and our focus was on God, you know, essentially. And so, you know, I think that there's way more things that make us alike than what make us different. You know, differences are good, but I just think that, you know, we also can't lose sight of the fact that we all serve one God, and we all causes his children. And so, you know, there's a way forward. There's absolutely a way forward. And I just hope that people don't throw their hands up in frustration and, you know, just feel like there's no way to overcome this.
Well, I think it happens one person at a time, and no one person is going to reach everyone well, you know. So anyway, man, I appreciate the time, brother. And man, I wish we could actually hang out in real life. That would be so much more fun. So my sister's in Atlanta. She's in the Atlanta area, so Decatur. If you know where Decatur, Alabama, Atlanta, you know, that part of Atlanta. But so next time I'm there, I'm gonna have to give you a call. But anyway, tell your wife I said hey, and man, it's great seeing you, and we'll talk again soon.
Will do, man. I appreciate you just letting me come on, man. Definitely, you tell your wife that we said hello as well, and tell the kids we asked about them as well.
Definitely. All right, brother. Have a good day. We'll see you soon.
Too. All right, take care. Bye.